Now, the last little while, we've been working our way through the letter of 1 Peter, and we've been focusing on really now what it looks like to live a life that is honoring to God, that's glorifying to God in a hostile world. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been really looking at how the Christian is supposed to relate to the civil government. We've looked at how the Christian is supposed to relate in employment. But we're going to be looking at the home today. If there's one spot where I think things have really fallen off in our society, it's got to be in the home. And I will tell you that, truthfully, is not by accident. Our systems are designed, nay, encouraged, almost for the breakup of the home. And there's a reason for that. Because as children grow, there are a couple of places where they really learn the value system that they will live with. And the two major ones, the one that they want, would be the education system. Well, they will learn a value system. The other one is the home. The home used to be the number one spot where children are going to learn what values are important. They're going to learn traditions. They're going to learn what gets handed down. And it's been no mistake that certain policies are put in place that actually are beneficial or encouraged for the home to be broken. And if you think I'm making that up, I want you to, for those who are old enough here, and I say that because technically I'm not old enough for this one, I want you to think of the 1970s, particularly in the States. And right around then, there were certain laws that started to come into place. And if you look in our current era that we live in, they will say that there's an era of what they would classify as systemic racism. Now, that's critical race theory. Now, I'm not a proponent of critical race theory for various means. I'm not talking about really looking at injustices. Critical race theory does something more. But one of the things that they look at, which is proper look, is saying we've got an epidemic of, unfortunately, people of color who end up in prison. And it's true. When you take a look at it, violent crimes are committed more by African Americans than they are by other groups per capita. And they stop to ask the question, why? Why is this happening? Why is it that crime is continuing to on the rise, not just that, but in all sectors? But I'm going to use them as the example. In all areas, there's a really good reason for this. Now, this is why I disagree with critical race theory. Critical race theory would say, well, the reason that they're that way is because the system is just against them and targets them. And I would disagree with that. It's good to ask the question why. But they didn't have that problem before the 70s as much. What happened? Laws in the States came into being which encouraged young black women to have children outside of wedlock. They encouraged with policies and things that would actually that benefit not having a male in the household. And as you look, this has continued to happen. If you were not familiar with Black Lives Matter, I don't mean the slogan. I mean the actual organization called BLM. In the original thing, before they removed it because people caught on it, they listed their goals. And do you know what one of their goals was that they removed? The destruction of the nuclear family. Why? Because they want to destroy the value system that holds it up. The Christian home is essential to the passing on of the gospel. When you look at certain things, in Timothy's case, disciple of Paul considered him a spiritual son. Where did Timothy originally learn about the faith? His Jewish mother and Jewish Jewish mother and Jewish grandmother. His father was a Greek. He praised it. When you look at the development from the Old Testament in the household, it was always designed for the fathers to instruct the children. we often don't think of this, but I want you to think about an event that kind of gets overshadowed because it's a detail that's in there, but it's when the prophet raises the Shunammite son. When the son starts to take ill, where was he? He was in the field working with his father. He's a young child. And because the work couldn't start, he wasn't feeling well, he said, take him to his mother. He was working with his father. He was learning. In Titus, what does it talk about? The instruction of the household. Older women teach the younger women. Teach them to what? One of the things is be good homemakers. To respect their husbands. To not be gossipers. To not be given to much wine. And then at the end it says, likewise, fathers. In other words, just like all that, teach the young men. So when it comes to the aspect of marriage, there's an important detail here. Where are our children learning what a good husband is, and where are they learning what a good wife is? In reality, a lot of them aren't. They're not getting the example. They're coming from such broken homes that they don't know. And you've got young girls growing up and saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody to date. I'm looking for somebody. And what do they choose? 9 times out of 10, they're going to choose somebody exactly like their father, whether they like that or not, even if the father is absent. If their father, using today's vocabulary, is toxic, coming, going, taking advantage of women, they're going to choose guys who are the exact same way, typically. There's always exceptions. And if men, all they see is a father who's absent, and all they get related to is domineering and dominant women, guess what they're going to choose? The exact same thing. Unless, and there's the other spot in our modern culture where they're running into getting a value system, they lock themselves into a certain aspect of certain communities. This happens through social media, through TikTok, through Instagram, through YouTubes. You've got communities like the transgender community. You've got the LGBTQ community. You even got on the other extreme side what is classified now as the red pill community. These are the more the misogynistic kind of aspect. They've got other slogans like MGTOW. And if you don't know what that means, it's MGTOW, men going their own way. In other words, women are just there either to benefit them or they just leave them. And is it any wonder that these communities are rising and there's a destruction of our society? But the truth is, when it comes to marriage, if you start asking even women, what does it mean to be a good wife? Their answer is going to vary. If you ask a husband, what's your job to be a husband? And I've watched enough of these where they really think that the husband's job is to do nothing but be the provider, the financial provider, and the protector. That's it. That's their job. And if that's it, then I can do what I want. And they're encouraging men they'll say, oh, if they have multiple partners, that's fine. That's just their genetics. That's all it is. That's just their evolutionary path where men are designed to have multiple spouses. Despite the fact that's contrary to Scripture. And then you've got women on the other side. What's the woman? To be a good one? It's like, oh, you've got to be strong, independent. The actual term now is you've got to be a boss babe. That's the term now. Where they're dominant, they're going to do what they want to do. They don't need no man. They can live however they want, and men are just there to give them money, pretty much. And you can find a whole group. This is how young women are growing up in the big cities and that. How women are affording their grocery bills. They're just going out on all these dates, have no interest in any of these guys, just to get them to pay. That's the goal. And I think what has happened, and this is within the church, they've lost what does it mean to be a good wife? What does it mean to be a good husband? And this morning we're going to look at exactly what Peter does. Peter describes this. Now don't forget, Peter's got one word to summarize the Christian life. If the Christian is going to live a life that is glorifying to God, and it should be no surprise because it's come up constantly, it's a constant life of submission. And Paul says the exact same thing. Yes, we're looking at 1 Peter. We're going to be looking at 1 Peter chapter 3. You can turn there. We're going to read in a second. But understand this, as we're going to be talking about this. Leading into this, when Paul goes to talk about this, Ephesians 5, verse 21, submit to one another in reverence of God. And then he goes off to talk about husbands and wives. We're going to be looking at Peter here. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. And we're going to go down to verse 7. He says, "Wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear. Do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. Rather, let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incomparable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. For in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trusted in God also adorned themselves, being submissive to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are if you do good and are not afraid with any terror. Husbands, likewise, dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered." All right, we're going to stop there in our reading. Now, I got to tell you, if there's one aspect that is going to be fearful in today's culture, it's a teaching that says, wives, submit to your husbands. And they're like, I'm not doing that. Because we've developed the wrong attitude of submission. Remember, one of the things that we've been driving home in our series here, at least the last couple of weeks, is this idea that this submission is not a forced one. It is not one where it's beaten into them. It is a voluntary acceptance of the rule of authority. You know, when it came to the government, we're not supposed to go around being anarchists. We know, it's like, no, we're supposed to be good, law-abiding citizens. We're supposed to be the example of what it means to be a law-abiding citizen. In the workplace, we're not designed to go and say, you know what, I'm going to just tear down my boss, I'm going to tear down the company. No, we're like, I'm supposed to submit to the authority of the company. I abide by their rules as long as they're not contrary to God's rules. And I be the best employee that I am supposed to be. So when it comes to the household, that same attitude is supposed to be there. The Christian wife should be, you know what? I am going to be the best wife that I can be. And the husband's supposed to say, I'm going to be the best husband I am going to be. Well, like I said, because of our culture, they're not even getting to look what that looks like, see what that looks like. I remember in my internship, way back, we're talking 20 plus years ago. Not quite 20 years ago, maybe about 17 years ago. I was doing a lot of visiting in Berwick Manor, and one of the couples that was assigned to me, there was actually two, that were really great. It was right. I had three couples, but one, they were just a couple that lives in Berwick Manor. There's the assisted living, where somebody lives on their own, but somebody comes in, does meals, pills, that kind of thing. Then you've got the actual apartments where the couples can live, but then you had the what you classify as the nursing home section. It was a big manor. And two of them, one of the couples, older gentleman, he had a stroke. He was a former pastor. He had a stroke, and it left him pretty much paralyzed. That the only thing he could really do was wink at you and give you a thumbs up. And I used to time my visits because I learned when his wife was always coming. His wife would come every single day. And we would talk. She'd help feed him. She'd clean him, things like that. And we'd talk every day. I love that couple. There's another couple. They were in the upstairs part. And she was the one who really needed care. I remember them. They're the Mickleraiths. I'm guessing they're probably gone to be with the Lord now. And the husband was, he didn't even really need to be there, but he moved in with his wife. He would not leave his wife, no matter what. And you think about it. And I look at our own church here. And it's fascinating. My wife and I, we've been married 20 years this year. You got that, Jeff? If you're reasoning why, because Jeff and Heidi were married the exact same time, exact same year. Just for Jeff to remember. And when we stop and we look at that, we look at it within our church. We're the fourth, if you can, but we're like the third, fourth youngest married couple in terms of time marriage. You take that outside of our church, and they're going, wow, you've been married that long? It's like, how'd you make it that long? It's like, we're not even near the oldest for married. Why? Because we took the vows till death do us part. And that's the way it is. And you got the examples. Now why? Who's my example? My grandfather. What did he make? 74 years. And then the other couple I absolutely love, the Longstaffs. They did make it to 74 years. Then another couple that I knew within the church, they made it 70 years. Until he passed. These are the examples that were set for us. To see what does it look like to have a godly husband. But the one thing that I noticed, and the one thing that we can fall into the trap here before we talk about it actually, is that the Christian life should be lived everywhere. And notice that this section that he's gone from in your social life with the government, in the social life, the marketplace, how you live as a good citizen of your country and of your province, down to your employer. And then where's the hardest spot to live the Christian life? Believe it or not, it's in the home. It's when all the other eyes are shut. And if I think of some of the complaints that come up through the years when Scripture's been abused, when they take the idea that husbands are the head of the household the wrong way, they will talk about, oh yeah, it's like, why do I hate the church? Because I watched and I knew my father, who was a deacon at the church, he would come home and he would abuse us, he would beat us, he would curse. What was he doing? He's like, I'm going to be this in public, yet not in private. And this often happens. We put on a facade. We put on an image when we're out in the marketplace. Yet when we get in the home, it can be the exact opposite. And I think this is the biggest problem. Because it's going to start running over into our everyday life. And as the Christian, you cannot be two-faced. That's the very definition of hypocrite. The definition of hypocrite is to wear a mask. It actually comes from the Greek hypocrite, to put on a mask in a play, to play different parts. I think of years ago, remember we had the kids on stage and I filled in for one kid and one of the other kids didn't want to do it and I just kept jumping back and forth between hats, trying to play multiple parts. You can say I was a hypocrite that day because I was playing three. I was doing the pastor plus two other parts. The reason I remember that is because I remember one part that I did and I got the wrong hat on and I went, whoop, the wrong one. Literally having two hats. But that's what the hypocrite is. He just plays a part. If we're not going to be the hypocrite, we need to live the Christian life in the marketplace where people are watching, and even more so in the home. In other words, when it comes to husband and wife, my wife should get the same person I am to everybody else. My wife should get the same caring and compassion that I give when I visit somebody who's on their deathbed. And likewise, the husband should be getting the same respect that the wife, if she's working, is giving to her boss. If she's giving her boss respect and honor, how much more should she be giving it to her husband? Do you ever wonder why it's breaking down? Because we're not living the same life out in the marketplace that we are in the home. And the Christian life was supposed to be in all wise. This is why he says, now, the reason I'm picking this up, the word that I just want you to focus on here in that verse is the word likewise. Wives, likewise. And then you go down to verse 7, what does it say? Husbands, likewise. In other words, the same willing submission you give to the government authority, the same willing submission that you give to your employer, the same willing submission that you give to anybody else who's in authority over you, you should be having that exact same attitude when it comes to life in the household. That's the way it's to be. We're not to be different people. And as I said, I think if there's one spot that's going to be the hardest, it's going to be this: to live the Christian life when nobody else is watching. And it's in the home. And I will tell you, in the scriptures point this out, that the one thing that men crave and men desire more than anything else is respect. This is why they're told, wives in Colossians, likewise wives, respect your husbands. And the worst thing that's going to destroy your husband is for him to watch you give respect to everybody else and not to him. And likewise, what do women all want? To be the queen. To be number one in their guy's life. To know that wives love, or husbands love your wives. What do they crave? They crave that love. Why do you think when they look nowadays at all these women who have gotten themselves into a very promiscuous crowd, there's usually one thing that they say that they all have in common? They have daddy issues. They're looking for that one person who is going to show them, guide them, lead them, direct them, and show them the love that they need. And they crave it. And when they can't get it, they'll go to anything that makes them feel it for a time. And that's the problem. And the scriptures tell us exactly how to be as the husband and the wife. We're going to start right where it starts. We're going to start with the wife. That's the way it's going to be. So you got the wives, be submissive to your husbands. As I said, in our culture, that's not one that people often like. Like, I don't want to, it's like you're telling me, see, here's the problem. We're automatically of the attitude that if I'm willingly submit to something, I am worth less than them. And that's not true. The position here has nothing to do with value. And in fact, the lesson and the instruction that's given to men is to drive that home, to understand that women are not less valuable than you. Because that is a problem in our culture. But it's also switched the other way. You go out and it's interesting, and I've seen plenty of interviews of this, where they find women, it's like, do you need men? Like, no, we don't need men. What do we need men for? We don't need them anymore. Yeah, you ask men, it's like, do we need women? They're like, yeah. Yeah, we need women. It's just hard to find the good ones. But a lot of women say, we don't need men anymore. They think they're nothing. But the Christian wife, not only is she supposed to look at her husband and say, you know what, I do need him. She's supposed to recognize the God-given position that he has as the head of the household. When it comes to the church, the position of the overseer, the teacher, the elder, the deacon, these were all designed by instruction to be given to the men. Unfortunately, so many fight against this because of the idea of women's liberation. Not the original women's liberation. We're not talking about the ones that said we're giving value to women, that women have the right to vote, that women should have the right to be in the marketplace and work. We're talking about the idea now of the third phase women's lib movement. If you're not familiar with that, research it sometime. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. All of a sudden, this is around the same time that developed the sexual revolution. Women's liberation. That women, you're now liberated if you can be promiscuous. Women, you're liberated if you can kill your own child. That you make that decision. They don't like me to word it that way, but that's exactly what the choice is. And they've destroyed it all. And so when they get a message that says, wives, respect the authority of your husband, they're like, no, I don't want that. Yet the scriptures make it clear. It says, not just Peter teaching this, Paul teaches it too. I remember one time talking with a lady and she got mad because she said Paul was a misogynist. I said, why? And she told me because he has all these things about women and he puts men up higher. I said, what do you think about Peter? She said, well, I like Peter. I said, you realize Peter said the exact same thing? She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, wives submit to your husband. Same thing. See, again, I want us to understand this is a willing submission to the authority of the position. There's something that we've lost in our culture. And it's respect for a position. Not respect itself. We've now redefined respect is earned. And we have no respect for the position itself. Kind of thing. Even Paul had respect for a position. When Paul was on trial one of the times, the chief priest, he said something, Paul rebuked him right there and he got slapped. Paul's like, why'd you slap me? He's like, how dare you say this to the chief priest? And Paul goes, whoa, sorry. Didn't realize he was the chief priest. He wasn't wrong with what he said, but he's like, oh, sorry, he's the chief priest. There's also a fascinating statement in the ministry of Jesus. Caiaphas gets up there and he makes a statement. It's like, no, it's more important that one man die for the sake of his country. Now, what was Caiaphas talking about? He was worried that Jesus was going to be seen as a revolutionary and the Roman Empire, who doesn't really like to put up with this, was going to come in and crush them. And he just says, it's better that one man die for the entire nation. And then it says something. It says, as chief priest, he was prophesying what was going to come, the death of Jesus. Not Caiaphas himself wasn't, but the office was. It was almost like God respected the office. He's like, I'm going to use it. And so this spot here is like, do you submit to the authority of your husband? Do you respect him? He's like, well, if he does something worth respecting, no. Respect the position of the husband. It's got nothing to do with him yet. And notice that Peter mentions that. Look at the first thing he says. That even if some do not obey the word. Because it was perfectly possible that within a marriage, that the wife would become a believer and the husband wouldn't. And all of a sudden, she's caught in a situation. So what? She's not going to sit there and go, well, when he does something worth respecting, well, then I'll respect. No. He's like, no. Even more so if he's not a believer. Because there's a goal that you want. And the real goal is for him to come to faith, but he will see it because your fear is not of him, it's of Christ. You're willingly submitting to his authority because ultimately you submit to the authority of Jesus. Now here's where it comes down to. Do we or do we not hold that all Scripture is given by the inspiration of God? If it is, then like it or not, Jesus, who is God, is inspiring all of the Scriptures. Which means when something in the Old Testament, when the people want to say, well, Jesus is love, Jesus never judges. When judgment fell on Sodom and Gomorrah, who was doing it too? It was Jesus. When the flood came, who was also in on it? Jesus was. That also goes for the New Testament. When Jesus was being grace and merciful and offering forgiveness, guess who else was doing it? The Father and the Spirit. And so when the Spirit would be remember the Godhead, who's the inspiration behind the Scriptures, comes out and he inspires the apostles to write, wives, submit to your husbands. Guess who's also given the stamp of approval, the authority? That would be Jesus. And so Jesus is saying, wives, submit to the authority of your husbands. That's a hard thing to do. And I know as soon as you start saying this, the wife's defense mechanism is, what about him? What about him? We're going to get to him. We're going to get to me. But for now, we're just looking at the scriptures. What does it say? Wives, submit to your husbands, even if they're not believers. But for the Christian wife in the duty here, something interesting. They get an extra instruction that the men don't get. And if you think our cultures have changed, not really. Do not let your adornment be merely outward. Arranging of hair, wearing of gold, putting on fine apparel. It's interesting that back in Solomon's day, in the day of the Proverbs, the final proverb, what's it say? Beauty is fleeting. It's interesting, even then, beauty seemed to be the goal. Even now, I remember, it's fascinating to watch. I was at the gym this week, and there was a lady who was there. And I could tell she was wearing a wig, she was wearing a ton of makeup, she was wearing fake eyelashes. It was kind of the question, like, you're changing your appearance so much. And I've seen videos, and you can call it now, the term is called catfishing, if you're not familiar with that term. That means they present themselves one way, but they actually look completely different. And usually it comes from dating apps kind of thing, where a person uses... it goes extreme where they actually use a picture of somebody else, or they'll use a picture of when they really look good. And you can find stories like, what's the worst catfish story you've ever run into, where they're on a dating app and they say, well, I get there and the woman weighs about 70 pounds more than her picture. Or the guy uses a picture from when he was in his prime in his 20s, yet he's like in his 40s. We all age. That's a form of catfishing. But then one of the oddest ones that I've ever heard was a guy who married a woman. This is a true story. The morning after the wedding, he gets the wedding annulled. Why? Because he said the woman he woke up to that morning was not the woman he married. Because up until that point, she never let him see without makeup. And she looked 100% different. And it is possible. Because I've seen videos where women will do it, like, this is what I look like, and then they show them, they put the makeup in each layer, but when they're done, you're like, is that even the same woman? It was one of the things when, unfortunately, we see more runaway teens nowadays. One of the pictures they put on, they gave you the description, said, oh, she's about this tall, this like, and she has blonde hair. The picture was her as a brunette. And finally, people are like, if you're going to tell us she's a blonde right now, show us a picture of her as the blonde. I told my wife a couple of years ago, I said, this is a problem. They're like, this is a missing person, but if it's a young teen girl or a woman, you need to get a picture of them without makeup. Because most times if they've gone missing, they don't have their makeup on now. And it's possible to walk right by people and not realize it's them. And you think, that's not true. And I know, we used to make fun of Clark Kent, Superman. You know the whole thing, he just takes off his glasses. And you're like, how could they not know? What's his name? Harry Carville. I think that's his name. He plays one of the more recent Supermans. They actually tested this. No joke. They were at a cantina. He went in Superman gear. Dressed as Superman. Everybody recognized him. He left, and people changed out. He came back in dressed as Clark Kent. As himself. And nobody recognized him. At all. And you don't think. And what has happened is, unfortunately in our culture, women are starting to almost look all the same. What do I mean by that? If you go into the culture at large, they're all dressing the same, they're getting the same cosmetic surgeries, they're doing their makeup the same. And you can have, and I've seen this, where you've got a daughter, a mother, and a grandmother, and they almost all look identical. For some reason, they all want to look about the age of 30. And they're streaming that their value is put on their looks. And it's funny because when you start watching these, and this is the problem with relationships too, they're asking the wrong question, but they start asking, what do you bring to the table? As if relationships are business. And 9 times out of 10, do you know what the woman in the interview is saying? I bring myself. In other words, You're good. I look so good that that's all I need to do. And these guys, what are you going to do when you're 40? What are you going to do when you're 50? You're not going to have those looks. And what are they doing? They're thinking that their adornment is physical. I'm going to tell you a secret if you don't know this, that men have. Okay? If you go to a beauty scale from 1 to 10, okay? And you ask how good are they on a scale, 1 to 10. First of all, most women are going to say, like it or not in the culture, they're a 10. Just so you know, if everybody's a 10, you're all a 5. Just how averages work. But that's generally it. But here's the thing. They start to change the question. Okay, the girl is an 8, but she has a rotten personality. What do you now rate her? And they go, like a 2. Her looks are a 5, but she's the most loving, compassionate, and respectful woman. What would you rate her? It's like, I'm giving her an 8. The outward adornment, just so you know, if you're from a guy's perspective, it's nice to look at, but we're never going to take you home. It's like looking at a Ferrari. It's nice to look at. I would never want to own one, drive one, or be in one. If somebody wants to go for a test drive, sure. I don't want to own one. Why? Too much upkeep, too much of a pain, too much trouble that somebody's going to come and try to steal it. I know that sounds funny, but think about it the same way. Of our culture today, women have developed this attitude that I'm going to trade up. As I said, they don't value men anymore. So if I've got somebody who looks-wise is a 10, nobody really is a 10, just so you know, but look-wise are an 8 or 9, and then some guy comes along who's 6 feet, makes 6 figures, can take her on trips, take her on and buy her this jewelry and stuff, do you think she's going to stay with me? No. Sure, her attitude is, I should be blessed just to be seen with her. And what ends up happening is they grow older and they usually become alone, or they have to settle for something that's terrible. And unfortunately, that influence of that beauty is being pushed onto young Christian women growing up. And it's even on the wives. Why? Because what are they watching? They're watching like Real Housewives and saying that's what a housewife is. I couldn't tell you how many shows now exist that are based on like Real Housewives. You name a city, it's probably it. Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles, Potomac, all of it. And then even when you get done those, you get shows like Preacher's Wives. You get shows like Wags. I'm serious, they're all the exact same thing. And women are looking at it like, well, that's what a wife is. She can do whatever she wants. She looks pretty. She's getting cosmetic surgery to look a certain way. And I will tell you, ladies, men really don't care about all this makeup or all these other things. They don't. 9 out of 10 men, if you ask them, would you prefer your partner to be all make-upped up or to be natural? Which would you prefer? Which do you find more attractive? Almost all of them will say more natural. We don't care about the $500 worth of products. And if you read the scriptures, you can see that. Don't let your adornment be merely outward. Rather, let it be the hidden person of your heart with incorruptible beauty. Physical beauty can change in an instant. Think about it. As sad as it is, you could be walking down the street and somebody inside, a window breaks, a piece of glass comes and cuts you across the face, leaves you a scar. Can happen. Changed in an instant. So your outward beauty's been corrupted, but that inward beauty is incorruptible. And what is it? It's a gentle and quiet spirit. Do you know what's also fascinating when they ask guys what's the one thing they want in their home? Do you know what they actually say? Peace. They want peace. They don't want to come home to constant fights. We're not talking about children making noise. Trust me, you come in my house, you're not going to get much peace and quiet. I'm trying to convince them to go to the loft more. It's not, but it's the non-fighting. It's not the noise of kids. Trust me, you walk into a house on Christmas morning and you hear kids making noise, laughing, playing with toys. That's not, you're not going, oh man, this is stressful. You're going, oh, that's a beautiful sound. It's peace. Unfortunately, what has our culture taught women to be? Loud, aggressive. I'm not saying men should be this either, but it's being pushed onto women. You got to speak it. You got to yell to get your butt. No. It's like, let it be with the incorruptible spirit. At the end of the day, and we talk about our sisters who've gone on to be the Lord, I have yet to hear one say, you know what? They were loud and they got their point across. No, what do they talk about? Their gentle spirit, which led many to Christ. That's what it was. All right, let's move to the men. Men. Here we go. Oh, sorry, one more point to the women. First, one more point. When it comes to the submission, just a note here. It is not to all men. It's only to their own husbands. Look at verse 1. Wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husband. At the end, being submissive to their own husband. It is not every man. In other words, let's give an example here because there are people like this. If we're downstairs and we're having a potluck meal and a guy is sitting there, he can't just go to anyone and say, hey, you woman, go get me something to drink. First of all, guys should never say it that way anyway. If it's not his wife, she has every right to say, no, I'm not. There's no reason for me to. Now, if her husband politely asks, honey, I got the kid on my knee here. Could you get me a drink while you're up? Her response should be, sure, what would you like? It's to her own husband, not to every man. This is not women listen to every man in the street. No. It's your own husband. Own husband only. Now let's get on to men. All right. Christian husband. Husbands, likewise. In other words, what's the likewise? Submissive to your wife. Now, here's why, though. And do so with understanding. Giving honor to the wife. Now, I'm going to tell you truthfully, our society is really good at honoring women. It is. International Women's Day. Heard all about it. You can hear it all the time. Does anybody know when International Men's Day is? Yes, it does exist. International Men's Day. November 18th. Do you know what also was on International Men's Day? International Toilet Day. Yep. Coincidentally, isn't it? Fascinating, huh? Yet, and I remember this, even when I used to listen to Joy FM a while back, and one of their DJs, I can't tell you which one it was, he would always talk about what day it was. You know what it was? Like, fascinating International Day. I did that in one of my pastor's emails. What was it, like International Give a Hug Day? Things like that. Like just what day it was. When it came to that day and it was International Men's Day, guess which one they never said? They never said it was International Men's Day. They did International Toilets Day and some other things, but not something else. Like, that's kind of fascinating. That's even from a Christian place that just didn't even recognize it. Our cultures are very good at honoring women. Husbands, I'm going to tell you one of the things that we can be bad at is honoring our wife. And I don't mean to other people. We can do that. We can do really good honoring to other people. So yeah, my wife is great. Are we telling her that? Are we saying, hey, I really appreciate when you did this. You did great with this. I like it when you did this. I like the fact, I really appreciate that I was extra tired. You allowed me to get some extra sleep last night. I appreciate that you're taking care of things while I'm off doing something else. To honor them. To look after them. And see, one of the things that has changed, you understand Peter's writing into a context where women were property. For the most part. And so he's now saying, no, I don't want you to treat her as that property. I want you to honor her. Not every other woman. Honor your wife. So the worst thing that a man can do, and this is why our culture is so bad with what's put in imagery in magazines, on internet, in billboards and everything. Men are getting inundated with we'll call the physical beauty of what's around them. Keep in mind, 90% of it's fake. And what do? They're overlooking the beauty of their wife. Men, your wife should be the most beautiful woman in the world. You should have such rose-tinted glasses on for her that no matter what anybody else says, she's the most beautiful. I said that there are really no 10 women. There are as a rated 10 women in the eyes of a husband. That's his wife. She's the only 10. That's the way it's to be. To honor her, to build her up. That means to honor her opinion. That means to honor her choices in times. To honor her selections, to honor her things. It's not this, I'm going to do it my way. It is why I often joke about you get the dad tax and husband tax and things like that. Usually it comes with meals. Because usually the dad drives. That means any food that passes his way, he gets the right, the dad tax to taste it first. So if fries pass his way, he gets the right to eat a fry. It's dad tax. Okay? The other thing about the dad tax, it's the leftover tax. Any leftover food, dad gets it. But there's one thing that dad has to give up to. If the dad orders a meal, husband orders a meal, and the wife orders a meal, and all of a sudden, for some reason, a woman's prerogative, she decides that your meal looks better or tastes better, he has to give it up. He switches. Even if he really doesn't want that meal, he still says, all right, honey, here, you can have it. I'll take this. He's honoring his wife. It's an honor to the wife. That's what it is. If the wife says, honey, I really don't like that you do something, guess what the husband should do? Even if to him it's not a big deal. So you know what? I'm going to do my best to make your day better. That's what I'm going to do. And it can be anything from where he leaves his shoes to where he puts a cup when he's finished with it. I'm not telling you anything about my household. It happens. But that's the way it is. And then it also says this, and this is another thing that gets people a little riled up. Husbands, give honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel. I almost guarantee you, as soon as that comes up, a lot of women are going to be like, what do you mean weaker? We give birth to children. You don't know what that pain's like. Just saying. If you really want to think you're the weaker, have a wrestling match with your husband. And let him actually try. You're going to notice a difference. And I want you to understand here, this weaker vessel here literally is talking about the biological differences there are between men and women. That's literally what he's referring to. He's talking about the fact that women typically, unless development has been altered by outside chemicals, naturally are weaker. Men have biological advantages over women. If you don't believe me, ask our paramedic. We've got bigger bone densities. We've got better blood flow. This is why, men, if you don't understand it, why women say they're cold, and we're like, what are you talking about? It's nice in here. Men have better blood flow. It's why it's the way we're designed, because we can transport oxygen throughout our body better. Helps us to recuperate when we're doing active things. Our muscles are built different. We're sturdier. Like I said, when's the last time you heard of a man just falling down and breaking his hip? You generally don't hear about it. It does happen when they get really up there, but it's typically it's women. Men have stronger bones. So it's literally talking about the physical differences between the husband and the wife, the man and the woman. And it's like, husbands, recognize this. So if she says the jars are on, she can't get the lid off the jar, get up and go open the jar. Oh, if you want another trick, ladies, run it under hot water. Why? Metal expands when it's hot, so we'll loosen it up a bit. That's only if you can't find the man. But also, here's a trick. Men, if your wives won't talk to you, just go and tighten every jar. She'll talk to you. Honey, open this. Might not be nice. I'll be like, open this thing. It's like, but she talked to you. It's a joke. But I want you to understand here, when it says vessels, that's not an insult. Because before Christ, we've all got this treasure in a vessel of clay. We're all vessels. And so here he's saying, I want you to understand this. When he says vessel here, he's talking about they are equal vessels along with you in Christ. Look what he says. Being heirs together. The same spirit that is in you is in her. So don't look at her as something that's less valuable. No, you look at her as something that is so precious that Christ died for her just like he died for you. Because in Christ's sight, she has the same value as you. This is why it says in Christ there's neither male nor female. It does not negate the biological differences, despite what some people want to try to make that verse mean now. What it means is the value and the grace and the love is the exact same. And so husbands, you better be looking at your wives and have the same respect for your wives that you do for Christ. This is why it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loves you. Yes, I know I changed the word, but you're a member of the church. That's how it's to be. And what's the purpose behind all this? I'm going a little long, so I'll come this one a little quicker. In both cases, so with women, that without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives, that the husbands would come to faith. Why? So that the wife, by living her life according to the gospel, that she would win over her husband. Now, you may be going, why doesn't it say that about husbands? I'll give you a quick answer here. Because 90% of the time when the husband comes to faith, the whole family does. Even more so in that culture. When the husband makes the decision, so we're now Christian, then the whole household goes, I'm Christian. You can still see this in the Muslim population. If the husband's Muslim and somebody wants to marry, she has no choice. She must become Muslim. Same with Orthodox Jews. If they want to marry into it, you must become Jewish. For some reason, Christians forgot that. This is why 1 Corinthians 7 is so important. Do not mix light with darkness. Christians marry Christians. If she's not going to become a believer, I'm sorry, do not marry her. How can you really have the connection with somebody who does not love the number one thing that you love? And yes, I know that there's always exceptions to the rules where somebody's married an unbeliever and they both came to faith. That happens. That's the exception, not the rule. And if you're in that spot, just count yourself really blessed. Because usually it goes the other way. So for the wives, your life is to live in such a way so your husband can come to faith. And that should be the desire of the wife. For husbands, so being heirs together so that your prayers may not be hindered. In other words, if husbands are wondering why they're stagnant in their faith, that they're not growing, the first place that they should look, how am I treating my wife? Because how you treat your spouse is going to be a direct reflection on your relationship with Christ. Let me say that again. How you treat your spouse is a direct reflection on your relationship with Christ. How can you claim to love, to respect, to honor, to obey Christ who you cannot see, if you cannot do this to the one you can see? The one who, by design, is in a position that they're in, be it wife or husband. The Christian life does not stop outside. It continues and should be more so within the household. And when we focus it on the household, I will tell you what, it's going to be reflected outside. And then all are going to see the glory of Christ. And that is the design of it. Let's pray. Father God, I just thank you for your instructions in your word. For your word is true. And yet, Father, there are so many times that we struggle with it. And Father, I pray for forgiveness for when we do fail. For forgiveness for when we do not put your words into practice. And Father, I pray for your Spirit to help us, to strengthen us, to live the way you've called us to live. For wives to seek out your instruction. For husbands as well. That the relationship that they have would be built on you, that the relationship they have would be a reflection of your love and grace and the relationship you desire. And that, Father, when we see such a relationship on display, that it would be a message to the world of the love of Christ, that they would desire as well. So, Father, use the husbands and wives, use the marriage for your glory to draw people to yourself. And may that be our desire in all things. In Jesus' name, amen.